The stars looked cold and distant through the viewport of the Terran ship. Jinha pressed his hand against the clear barrier, watching as the last Alliance vessels disappeared into hyperspace. One by one, they vanished in flashes of blue light, leaving the Marin system behind. "They're really gone," he whispered. Harin stood beside him, her dark eyes wide with disbelief. "I didn't think they would actually leave." Jinha turned away from the viewport, his jaw tight with anger. The Galactic Alliance, a union of over 30 advanced species, had just abandoned an entire civilization to die. The Marins, with their silver skin and gentle ways, had only reached the stars a decade ago. They weren't ready for what was coming. "How long until the Void Swarm arrives?" Jinha asked. Quan looked up from his console, his face grim. 7 days, sir, maybe less. 7 days until billions of lives would be extinguished. The Void Swarm didn't leave survivors. They consumed everything in their path, planets, moons, asteroids. They were like locusts, but on a cosmic scale. "Ambassador," called Quan from the communication station. "The Marin High Council is asking to speak with you." Jinha straightened his blue uniform jacket and nodded. "Put them through." The large screen on the wall flickered to life. A tall, willowy figure appeared, the Marin High Speaker. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, and her large eyes held a deep sadness that made Jinha's chest tighten. "The Alliance ships have left our system," she said simply. Her voice was musical, with an echo that seemed to linger in the air. "We understand. The swarm is too powerful. We have begun our final ceremonies." Jinha felt a flash of shame, not for himself, but for the alliance that had promised protection to the Marins when they first made contact. Promises that turned to dust when real danger appeared. "High Speaker," Jinha said, stepping forward. "I want to be clear. The Terran ship is not leaving." The High Speaker tilted her head, confusion crossing her delicate features. "But the Alliance has ordered all ships to withdraw. The swarm—" "We are aware of the swarm," Jinha interrupted. "We are also aware that there are 3 billion Marins on your world. People with families, dreams, and futures." Harin moved to stand beside Jinha, her face set with determination. "Earth doesn't abandon friends." The High Speaker's large eyes blinked slowly. "You would stay? One ship against the swarm? This is not logical." Jinha smiled. It wasn't. The first time humans had been called illogical by other species. The Alliance valued careful calculation and risk assessment. Humanity valued something else. "High Speaker, my ship will remain in your system. We've already sent messages to Earth. More ships will come." "More ships?" The High Speaker's voice held a note of hope for the first time. "How many?" Jinha exchanged glances with Harin and Quan. The truth was he didn't know. Earth was still new to the galactic community. Their fleet was small compared to the major Alliance powers. "As many as we can gather," he said honestly. "I can't promise victory against the swarm, but I can promise this: humanity will not abandon you." The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. Then she pressed her long fingers to her chest, a Marin gesture of deep respect. "We do not understand," she said softly, "but we are grateful." After the transmission ended, Jinha turned to his crew. The small diplomatic vessel wasn't built for combat. They had 20 people on board, minimal weapons, and no chance against even a fraction of the Void Swarm. "Sir," Quan said, breaking the silence, "what's our plan?" Jinha moved to the central table and activated the holographic display. The Marin system appeared in glowing blue light, a yellow star with 7 planets. The third planet, Mara, was home to the silver-skinned telepaths who now faced extinction. "We have 7 days," Jinha said. "We need to prepare the Marins for evacuation." Harin looked shocked. "Evacuation? But there are billions of them, and they've never left their homeworld." "They'll have to," Jinha replied grimly. "We can't save the planet, but we can try to save the people." Rex, the ship's security chief, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. "The Alliance couldn't evacuate them with hundreds of ships. What can we do with one?" Jinha looked at each of his crew members. They were young, most of them on their first deep space assignment. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance. 15 years ago, they were still proving themselves to the older species. "We can show them how to fight," Jinha said, "and we can show them how to survive." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Jinha's ship, the Horizon, moved into orbit around Mera. They began transmitting emergency protocols to the planet below. The Marans, despite their peaceful nature, responded with remarkable speed. "They're telepathic," Harin explained as she monitored the communications. "Once their leaders understand a concept, it spreads through their population almost instantly." Jinha nodded. "That will help. What about their ships?" "They have about 50 vessels capable of interstellar travel," Quan reported. "Mostly research and exploration craft. Nothing designed for mass evacuation." "It won't be enough," Jinha said quietly. The door to the bridge slid open, and Jake Morrison, the ship's pilot, rushed in. His face was flushed with excitement. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from Earth." Jinha felt a surge of hope. "Put it on screen." The main display lit up with the face of Admiral Chen, Earth's representative to the Alliance Defense Council. Her expression was stern, but Jinha could see approval in her eyes. "Ambassador Jinha," she said, "we received your emergency broadcast. The Alliance Council has officially ordered all ships to withdraw from the Marin sector." Jinha's hope began to fade. "Admiral, I understand the order, but—" "However," Admiral Chen continued, a small smile forming, "Earth does not agree with this decision. 17 Terran vessels are currently en route to your position. ETA 3 days." The bridge erupted in cheers. Jinha felt his shoulders sag with relief. 17 ships won't be enough to defeat the swarm," Admiral Chen cautioned. "But it might be enough to organize an evacuation. Your mission is to save as many Marins as possible." "Understood, Admiral," Jinha replied. "Thank you." After the transmission ended, Jinha turned to his crew. Their faces showed a mix of relief and determination. 17 ships, Rex said. "Better than one, but still suicide against the swarm." "Maybe," Jinha agreed. "But sometimes all it takes is one stand to change everything." He returned to the viewport, looking down at the blue-green world of Myra. From space it looked peaceful, beautiful, unaware of the darkness approaching. The void swarm would arrive in 7 days, and the fate of an entire species now rested partly in human hands. "We have work to do," Jinha said, turning back to his crew. "Let's show the galaxy what humans do when friends are in danger." As the Horizon orbited Myra, news of the human decision spread across the planet below. The Marins, who had been preparing for the end, now prepared for something else. A desperate fight for survival, led by the youngest species in the Alliance, the species that refused to leave them behind. The hangar bay of the Terran ship Defiant buzzed with activity. Pilots checked their fighters while engineers rushed to load supplies. In 3 days, 17 human ships had arrived in the Marin system. It wasn't much against the void swarm, but it was all Earth could send. Rex wiped sweat from his forehead as he inspected his fighters' weapon systems. The small craft was designed for speed, not power. Against the swarm, it would be like fighting a shark with a toothpick. "This is insanity," he muttered, tightening a loose panel. "Glorious insanity." "Talking to yourself again?" Harin asked as she approached. She carried a tablet showing the latest scans of the system. Rex shrugged. "Just wondering if we'll live long enough to regret this." "Probably not," Harin replied with a small smile. "But that's not why we're here." Around them, the hangar continued, its frantic preparations. The Defiant was the largest of the human ships, a battle cruiser that had been rushed from Earth's orbital shipyards. The other 16 vessels were smaller, patrol ships, science vessels, even converted cargo haulers. Not the fleet you'd want against the galaxy's most feared enemy. Jinha entered the hangar, his uniform now bearing the insignia of the Emergency Defense Force. The past 3 days had aged him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his normally neat hair was disheveled. How are the evacuations going? Rex asked. Jinha's expression was grim. Slower than we hoped. The Marins have never faced something like this. They don't understand the concept of leaving people behind. Harin nodded. Their telepathic connection makes them function almost as one mind. Separation is painful for them. Well, they're about to get a crash course in human stubbornness, said a new voice. Jake Morrison, now captain of the Defiant, walked toward them. His weathered face showed the scars of previous battles. The swarm will arrive in 18 hours, sooner than we expected. A heavy silence fell over the group. 18 hours. Not enough time to evacuate even a fraction of the Marin population. How many can we save in 18 hours? Jinha asked quietly. Harin checked her tablet. At current rates, maybe 2 million. Out of 3 billion. Rex whistled low. Those aren't good odds. When are they ever? Jake replied. We've set up the defensive formation. All ships will position themselves to create a corridor for the Marin evacuation vessels. Jinha studied the tactical display Harin showed him. The human ships would form a sphere around the escape route, drawing the swarm's attention while Marin ships fled to the jump point. The Alliance would call this formation suicide, Jinha observed. Jake's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Good. Thing they're not here to stop us, then. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. Jinha traveled to the surface one last time to meet with the Marin High Council. The silver-skinned aliens had transformed their central city into an evacuation center. Millions gathered in orderly lines, waiting for ships that could carry only a fraction of them. The High Speaker met Jinha in a quiet garden outside the council chambers. Despite the chaos around them, she maintained a serene presence. Your people have done more than we could have hoped, she said, her musical voice soft. But I must ask you something, Ambassador. Jinha nodded. Anything. Why? The High Speaker's large eyes studied him intently. The Alliance abandoned us because the risk was too great. Your species is young, still growing. Why sacrifice yourselves for us? Jinha considered the question. It was one the Alliance had asked too. Why would humans risk their limited fleet for a species they barely knew? On Earth, Jinha began, we have a long history of both great cruelty and great kindness. We've learned through painful experience that standing by while others suffer changes you. It makes you less than what you could be. He looked up at the sky, where human ships now orbited alongside Marin evacuation vessels. We're not here because we think we can win, he continued. We're here because we couldn't live with ourselves if we didn't try. The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched Jinha's forehead with her long fingers, a gesture of deep connection in Marin culture. Your species is unlike any we have encountered, she said. You burn so brightly. When Jinha returned to the Defiant, final preparations were underway. Quan had taken charge of the tactical station on the bridge, coordinating with the other human vessels. All ships report ready, Quan announced as Jinha entered. The first Marin evacuation vessels are launching now. Jinha took his position beside Captain Morrison's chair. The bridge was tense, everyone aware of what approached. How long until the swarm arrives? Jake asked. 17 minutes, Harin replied from the science station. Long-range sensors are detecting their approach. It's bigger than we thought. The main screen showed the darkness spreading across the stars. The void swarm traveled in a cloud of ship creatures, each one a living weapon. They consumed everything in their path, using the materials to create more of themselves. All hands to battle stations, Jake ordered, his voice calm despite the odds. Shields at maximum. Weapons hot. Throughout the ship, crew members moved to their positions. Some were veterans of smaller conflicts, but many were young, their first taste of real combat about to begin. In the fighter bay, Rex climbed into his craft. Around him, 24 other pilots did the same. Their job would be to protect the Marin ships as they fled to safety. Fighter Squadron Alpha ready for launch, Rex reported through his comm. Launch when ready, came Jake's reply. And Rex, good hunting. The fighters streamed out of the Defiance Bay, taking up escort positions around the first wave of Marin evacuation ships. The silver vessels were beautiful but fragile, designed for scientific exploration, not escape from danger none. The bridge Jinha watched as the human fleet moved into position. 17 ships against thousands. It should have been hopeless. Perhaps it was. First Marin vessels approaching the jump point, Quan reported. 5 minutes until they're clear. And 3 minutes until the swarm is in weapons range, Harin added. Jinha exchanged glances with Jake. The captain's face was set with determination. We just need to hold them off, Jake said. Every minute we buy saves more lives. The swarm arrived like a storm of black knives cutting through space. Their biomechanical ships moved with perfect coordination, a hive mind that had broken countless defense forces. All ships maintain formation, Jake commanded over the fleet channel. Remember the plan, we're not trying to win, just buy time. The first shots fired across the void. Beams of energy from human ships struck the leading edge of the swarm. The creatures seemed to absorb the hits, then respond with their own weapons, streams of bioplasma that could melt through the strongest armor. First wave of Marin ships clear, Quan shouted over the noise of battle alerts. Second wave moving into position. Jinha felt a surge of hope. It was working. They were saving lives. Then the swarm struck in earnest. The black ships swarmed around the human vessels like angry insects. Their attacks came from all directions, testing shields, looking for weaknesses. Shields at 80%, Harin reported as the Defiant shook from a direct hit. In space around them, the smaller human ships fought desperately. What they lacked in power, they made up for in unpredictability. Human pilots executed maneuvers that seemed random, confusing the swarm's coordinated attacks. The Marins report the second wave of ships is loaded and launching, Jinha said, reading the incoming messages. That's another 100,000 people. Jake nodded grimly. Then, we keep fighting. As the battle raged, something unexpected happened. The swarm, used to fighting the precise, predictable tactics of the Alliance, seemed confused by human battle patterns. Where Alliance ships would retreat in perfect order, human vessels charged forward. Where Alliance commanders would sacrifice, damage ships to save others, humans risked everything to protect their wounded. They're adapting slower than expected, Harin observed, studying the swarm's movements. Our unpredictability is confusing them. For 4 hours, the battle continued. The human fleet lost 3 ships but maintained their defensive position. The evacuation corridor remained open, each Marin Arc safely escorted to the jump point. We might actually pull this off, Rex's voice crackled over the comm as his fighter squadron regrouped after another escort run. Jinha allowed himself a moment of hope. Then the sensors detected something new. Captain, Quan called out, his voice tight with alarm. Second wave of the swarm detected. They're coming in from the system edge. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed this news. One wave of the swarm had pushed them to the limit. A second would be the end. How long until they reach us? Jake asked quietly. 2 hours, Harin replied. Maybe less. Jinha looked at the tactical display, at the tiny dots representing millions of Marins still waiting for evacuation. They had saved perhaps 500,000 so far. Billions remained. We keep fighting, Jinha said firmly, until the last ship, until the last person. Jake nodded, his eyes reflecting the determination that had brought humans across the stars. Until the last ship, he agreed. All hands, prepare for the second wave. The second wave of the void swarm approached like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. On the bridge of the Defiant, Jinha watched the tactical display with growing dread. The human fleet had already lost 5 ships. Only 12 remained. All of them damaged. Status report, Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Quan wiped blood from a cut on his forehead as he checked his console. Shields at 42%. Weapon systems still operational, but we're running low on missile reserves. The Marin evacuation? Jinha asked. Harin looked up from her station. Just over 1 million evacuated so far. The next wave of Orcs is launching now. 1 million saved. It should have felt like a victory, but with billions still on the planet below, it was a drop in an ocean. How long until the second swarm wave reaches us? Jake asked. 90 minutes, Harin replied. And our remaining ships won't last that long against the first wave. Rex's voice crackled over the comm system. Fighter Squadron Alpha requesting permission to rearm and refuel. We've lost 8 fighters, but we're still in the fight. Permission granted, Jake said. Make it quick, Rex. We need every ship we can get. Jinha moved to the viewport, watching as the battle raged around them. The human ships fought with desperate courage, using maneuvers that no Alliance captain would have attempted. They spun and dove, drawing swarm ships away from the evacuation corridor. Ambassador, Harin called suddenly. I'm detecting unusual activity from the Marin surface. Jinha turned. What kind of activity? Energy readings, she replied, frowning at her screen. Massive power surges across the planet. I've never seen anything like it. The main screen shifted to show the surface of Mera. Across the blue-green, world points of silver light were appearing, growing brighter by the second. Are they self-destructing? Quan asked quietly. Jinha shook his head. No, the Marins wouldn't do that. They're doing something else. The comm system chimed with an incoming transmission from the planet. The high speaker's face appeared on screen, her silver skin glowing with an inner light that hadn't been there before. Ambassador Jinha, she said, her voice stronger than he had ever heard it. Your people have shown us what it means to stand against the impossible. Now we will show you what the Marins can do. High speaker, what's happening? Jinha asked. We are a telepathic species, she explained. For generations, we have used our abilities only for communication and understanding. We never considered them as weapons. Jinha felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? We are linking our minds, the high speaker said. All 3 billion Marins joined as one consciousness. We have never attempted this before. The results may be unexpected. Before Jinha could respond, the transmission cut off. On the tactical display, the silver lights on the planet's surface grew brighter, connecting in a web-like pattern that soon covered the entire world. Captain, Harin called out, her voice filled with awe. You need to see this. The main screen showed the void swarm ships closest to Mera. They were stopping, not just slowing down but freezing in space as if caught in invisible ice. What's happening to them? Jake asked, leaning forward in his chair. I don't know, Harin admitted, but the effect is spreading. More swarm ships are being affected. Quan's console beeped with new information. Sir, the second wave of the swarm has stopped advancing. They're just hanging in space. For several minutes, the bridge crew watched in stunned silence as more and more swarm ships froze in position. The attack on the human fleet slowed, then stopped entirely. Are they dead? Rex asked over the comm as his fighter squadron patrolled, near a cluster of immobile swarm vessels. Not dead, Harin replied, studying her readings. More like paralyzed. Their systems are still running, but they can't move or attack. Jinha understood then what the Marins were doing. They're using their telepathic abilities against the swarm's hive mind. They're disrupting the connection. I didn't know that was possible, Jake said. Neither did they, Jinha replied softly, but they saw us fighting against impossible odds, and it gave them the courage to try something new. The comm system chimed again. This time, it wasn't the high speaker who appeared on screen, but a younger Marin, his silver skin pulsing with energy. Ambassador, he said, his voice strained. I am Talon speaking for the collective. We cannot hold the swarm forever. Our minds are. It is painful. But we will give you time to evacuate more of our people. How long can you maintain? This? Jinha asked. Perhaps 6 hours, Talon replied. No longer. After that, we will be too exhausted to continue. 6 hours. It wasn't enough to save everyone, but it was more time than they had dared hope for. We'll make every minute count, Jinha promised. After the transmission ended, Jake immediately began issuing orders. All ships focus on evacuation assistance. The swarm is temporarily neutralized. I repeat, the swarm is temporarily neutralized. We have 6 hours to get as many Marins off planet as possible. The human fleet, battered but still functional, shifted from defense to evacuation support. Fighters escorted Marin Arcs to the jump point while larger vessels moved into position to provide cover. In the hangar bay, Rex landed his fighter for quick repairs. The small craft was scorched and dented from multiple encounters with swarm ships. 6 hours, he said to Harin as she passed through the bay. How many can we save in 6 hours? Harin checked her tablet. At maximum capacity, maybe another 3 million. It's still not enough. It's better than nothing, Rex replied, patting his fighter's hull. We keep going until we can't. On the bridge, Jinha worked with Quan to coordinate the evacuation efforts. Every available ship, including damaged human vessels, was being used to transport Marins to safety. Ambassador, Jake said quietly, joining Jinha at the tactical station. We need to consider what happens when the 6 hours are up. Jinha nodded grimly. The swarm will be free and they'll be angry. And we'll be out of options, Jake added. Even if we save another 3 million, that still leaves billions on the surface. Jinha stared at the display, at the billions of lives represented by tiny dots on the screen. There had to be another way. Something they hadn't considered. What if we could evacuate the entire planet at once? He asked suddenly. Jake looked at him in confusion. That's not possible. We don't have enough ships. Not with ships, Jinha said, an idea forming. With their minds. I don't understand, Jake admitted. Jinha turned to Harin. The Marins are currently linked as one mind, powerful enough to stop the swarm. What if they could project that mind elsewhere? Harin's eyes widened as she caught his meaning. You're talking about mental transference? That's theoretical at best. So was stopping the swarm with telepathy, Jinha pointed out. We need to talk to the Marin Collective. Within minutes, they had established communication with Talon again. The young Marin looked even more strained than before, silver skin dulled with exhaustion. What you're suggesting is unprecedented, Talon said after Jinha explained his idea. To transfer our entire collective consciousness to another location, it has never been attempted. But is it possible? Jinha pressed. Talon was silent for a long moment. Perhaps. Our bodies would die, but our minds, our essence, might survive the transfer. But we would need a destination, a place to receive us. What about the evacuated Marins? Harin suggested. Could they act as anchors? Yes, Talon said, his eyes brightening slightly. Those already saved could form a foundation for the rest to join. But the distance, it would require enormous power. Jinha looked at Jake. What if we redirected all power from our remaining ships? Everything except life support. Jake considered this. It might work, but it would leave us defenseless when the swarm breaks free. If this works, Jinha said, there won't be anyone left for the swarm to kill. For the next hour, the human fleet worked frantically on 2 fronts. Half continued the physical evacuation, rushing as many Marins to safety as possible. The other half prepared for the unprecedented mental transfer, rerouting power systems, and positioning ships to create a network around the planet. On the surface, the Marin Collective prepared as well. Their cities glowed with silver light as billions of minds focused on a single desperate plan. We're ready, Talon reported 5 hours into the swarm's paralysis. But Ambassador, you should know, the strain of holding the swarm is weakening. We may not have the full hour remaining. Jinha nodded grimly. Then we do it now. All ships' final positions. The human fleet formed a ring around Myera, their combined power systems linked to support the massive energy transfer about to take place. Good luck, Jinha said to Talon. We'll see you on the other side. As the Marin Collective began their desperate attempt, the silver web covering the planet grew blindingly bright. In space, the paralyzed swarm ships began to twitch, their freedom approaching. The fate of billions now hung in the balance, dependent on an untested theory and the combined will of 2 species who refused to surrender to the impossible. The silver light from Myera grew so bright that the bridge crew had to shield their eyes. The planet seemed to pulse with energy as 3 billion minds joined together in one desperate act. Power levels are off the charts, Harin reported, her voice filled with awe. I've never seen anything like this. Jinha gripped the edge of the tactical console. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Either the Marins would successfully transfer their collective consciousness, or billions would die when the swarm broke free. How are our ships holding up? Jake asked. Quan checked his readings. All vessels maintaining position. Power transfer, stable at 94%. Around Myra, the 12 remaining human ships formed a perfect circle. Each vessel had diverted nearly all power to special transmitters designed to help channel the Marin telepathic energy. Only life support and basic systems remained active. The swarm ships are starting to move again, Rex reported from his fighter. He and a small group of pilots patrolled the edge of the formation, watching for signs of danger. Whatever the Marins are doing to hold them, it's weakening. Jinha looked at the main screen. The black ships of the Void Swarm were indeed beginning to twitch and turn. Soon they would be free to continue their attack. How much longer? Jake asked. Talon estimated 30 minutes for the full transfer, Harin replied. We're only 10 minutes in. Jinha felt a cold knot of fear in his stomach. They wouldn't have 30 minutes. The swarm was breaking free too quickly. The comm system chimed with an incoming transmission. Talon's face appeared on screen, his silver skin now pale and drawn with strain. Ambassador, he said, his voice weak. We are proceeding, but the collective is weakening. The swarm fights against our control. Can you speed up the transfer? Jinha asked. Talon closed his eyes briefly. Yes, but at great risk. Many minds may be lost in the process. Jinha looked at Jake, who nodded grimly. Do it, Jinha told Talon. We'll hold the swarm as long as we can. After the transmission ended, Jake turned to his crew. All hands prepare for combat. As soon as the swarm breaks free, they'll come, for us. Throughout the Defiant, crew members moved to battle stations. Weapons systems powered up, drawing energy from the already strained reserves. In the fighter bay, the remaining pilots rushed to their ships. Only 16 fighters remained from the original 24. They would be the first line of defense when the swarm attacked. Fighter Squadron Alpha, ready for launch, Rex reported. Launch when ready, Jake ordered. Form a defensive screen between the swarm and the planet. The fighters streamed out of the bay, taking up positions around the larger vessels. They looked tiny against the vastness of space and the thousands of swarm ships that would soon be free. On the bridge, Jinha watched as the silver light from Myra pulsed faster, growing more intense with each passing minute. Energy transfer at 67%, Harin reported. The process is accelerating. And the swarm? Jinha asked. Quan's face was grim. Breaking free. I estimate 5 minutes before they're fully mobile. 5 minutes. Not enough time for the Marins to complete their transfer. Not enough time to save everyone. Jinha made a decision. Captain, I need to speak to all ships. Jake nodded and opened a channel. All frequencies open, Ambassador. Jinha took a deep breath. This is Ambassador Jinha to all Terran vessels. The Marins need more time to complete their consciousness transfer. We must give them that time, whatever the cost. He paused, looking at the faces of the bridge crew. They were tired, scared, but determined. I am asking for volunteers to form a blocking action against the swarm. This will be a one-way mission. Anyone who participates will likely not return. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then the comm system erupted with responses. Fighter Squadron Alpha volunteers. Patrol Ship Courage standing by. Science Vessel Discovery ready to assist. Ship after ship, crew after crew, they all volunteered. No hesitation, no fear. Just determination to save as many lives as possible. Jinha felt a lump in his throat. This was humanity at its best, willing to sacrifice everything for others. Thank you, he said simply. Form up and prepare to engage on my mark. The human ships began to move, positioning themselves between the increasingly active swarm and the glowing planet. The Defiant took the lead position, its damaged hull still bearing the scars of earlier fighting. Swarm ships breaking free, Quan announced. First wave moving to attack. All ships engage, Jake ordered. Keep them away from Mara at all costs. The battle erupted once more. Human ships fired everything they had at the approaching swarm. Fighters darted between the larger vessels, targeting the lead swarm ships. On the planet below, the silver light pulsed faster and brighter as the Marins pushed their collective consciousness to the limit. Energy transfer at 82%, Harin reported as the Defiant shook from a direct hit. They're almost there. The human fleet fought with desperate courage. When a ship's weapons failed, it rammed into the swarm vessels. When fighters ran out of ammunition, pilots used their ships as missiles. Rex's voice crackled over the comm. My squadron is down to 3 fighters. We'll try to buy you more time. Rex, don't, Jinha began, but it was too late. On the screen, the 3 remaining fighters flew directly into the heart of the swarm. Their engines pushed beyond safe limits. They exploded in brilliant flashes, taking dozens of swarm ships with them. Jinha closed his eyes briefly. So many lives lost. So much sacrifice. Shields failing, Quan reported as another hit rocked the Defiant. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Reroute emergency power, Jake ordered. Keep us between the swarm and the planet. The battle continued, growing more desperate by the minute. Of the 12 human ships that had formed the circle, only 5 remained. The Defiant's bridge was filled with smoke, emergency lighting casting everything in a red glow. Energy transfer at 94%, Harin called out, her voice hoarse from the smoke. Almost there. Jinha looked at the tactical display. The swarm was breaking through their defensive line. There were simply too many of them. We need more time, he said, his voice tight with frustration. Suddenly the sensors beeped with new information. Quan's eyes widened as he checked the readings. Captain, he called out, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace windows opening at the edge of the system. Jinha felt his heart sink. If this was swarm reinforcements, they were finished. The main screen showed the edge of the system, where space seemed to ripple and tear. Then, one by one, ships began to emerge from hyperspace. Not swarm ships, but others, familiar designs. Alliance vessels, Harin whispered in disbelief. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. The comm system crackled to life with a transmission on an Alliance frequency. This is Admiral Zhen of the Galactic Alliance 7th Fleet to Terran forces. We received your broadcasts. Hold position. Reinforcements have arrived. Jinha stared at the screen in shock as more and more Alliance ships appeared. They moved into attack formation immediately, their weapons firing at the swarm. I don't understand, Harin said. The Alliance Council ordered withdrawal. Jinha watched as the Alliance ships formed up alongside what remained of the human fleet. Then he understood. It wasn't the Alliance that came back, he said softly. It was individual captains, individual crews. They saw what we were doing and couldn't stay away. The comm system chimed again as messages flooded in from Alliance vessels. The Rigelian Concordat stands with humanity. Centauri Battle Group reporting for duty. The free worlds of Tau Ceti will not abandon the Marins. Jake laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. Seems we started something, Ambassador. With the arrival of the Alliance ships, the tide of battle turned. The swarm, already confused by human tactics, now faced overwhelming numbers. Energy transfer at 98%, Harin reported, her voice stronger now. They're going to make it. Jinha moved to the viewport, watching as the silver light from Myra reached its peak. For a moment, the entire planet seemed to glow like a star. Then slowly, the light began to fade. Transfer complete, Harin said quietly. 3 billion minds saved. As the light faded completely, the planet below looked strangely empty. The cities that had once housed billions were now silent, their inhabitants gone not in body but in mind. Their consciousness transferred to join those who had been physically evacuated. The swarm, sensing the change, redoubled their attack. But it was too late. The combined human and Alliance fleet pushed them back, away from the now empty world. Jinha felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief for those lost in the battle, relief that the Marins had been saved, and hope that perhaps this moment marked a change in the galaxy. "Ambassador," Quan called out. "Incoming transmission from the evacuation point." The screen showed a familiar face, Talon, looking exhausted but alive. Behind him stood other Marins, their silver skin glowing with renewed energy. "We made it," Talon said simply. "The collective has joined with those already evacuated. We are whole." Jinha smiled, feeling the weight of the past days lift slightly from his shoulders. "And we will find you a new home," he promised. "Together." As the battle continued around them, Jinha knew that something fundamental had changed. Humanity had stood when others retreated. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for something greater than survival, and they had not stood alone. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Myera. Jinha stood in the Great Hall of Remembrance on New Myera, a planet that had become home to the saved Myeran consciousness. The vast chamber was lined with holographic memorials to those who had fallen in the defense of the Myeran people, human and Alliance alike. Jinha paused before the image of Rex, the fighter pilot who had sacrificed himself to buy precious minutes for the Myeran transfer. His face was frozen in a confident smile, eyes bright with determination. "I still miss him," Harin said, joining Jinha before the memorial. She wore the formal uniform of a Terran Myeran liaison officer now, with silver trim that matched the skin of the people they had saved. "We all do," Jinha replied softly. "Him and all the others." The final count had been sobering. Of the 17 human ships that had come to Myra's defense, only 7 had survived. Over 600 human lives lost. But their sacrifice had saved 3 billion Marins. "The ceremony is about to begin," Harin reminded him. "The Alliance Council members have arrived." Jinha nodded and followed her through the hall. The space filled quickly with representatives from across the galaxy. The Alliance Council members looked appropriately solemn, though Jinha noted many wouldn't meet his eyes. Their shame was still fresh, as it should be. Quan approached, now wearing the uniform of a Terran fleet captain. The Battle of Myera had changed many careers, his included. "Ambassador," he greeted Jinha with a smile. "Good to see you again." "Captain Quan," Jinha replied, clasping his hand. "How's the Defiant?" "Fully repaired and better than ever," Quan said proudly. "Jake sends his regards. He wanted to be here, but someone had to mind the ship." The crowd fell silent as the Myeran High Speaker glided to the center of the hall. Her silver skin reflected the memorial lights, creating a soft glow around her tall form. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner without amplification. "1 year ago we faced extinction," she began. "The Void Swarm approached, and those who called themselves our allies retreated." She paused, her large eyes scanning the crowd. "All except one species. Humanity, the newest, the least advanced, the most unpredictable member of the galactic community, stood when others fled." Jinha felt the weight of eyes upon him. The story of humanity's stand at Myera had spread throughout the galaxy, changing how other species viewed Earth and its people. "What we witnessed was not merely courage," the High Speaker continued. "It was the essence of what makes humans unique in our galaxy. Where others calculate odds, humans defy them. Where others see impossibility, humans see challenge. Where others retreat, humans advance." The hall was completely silent now, every being present hanging on her words. "The humans have a phrase," the High Speaker said, "that has become sacred to my people. With you always." These words, spoken by Ambassador Jinha when all seemed lost, have become more than a promise. They have become a new foundation for our galactic community. She gestured, and the center of the hall lit up with a holographic display. It showed Earth and New Mera, orbiting each other like binary stars with the words "with you always" inscribed below in a dozen galactic languages. "Today we honor those who fell so that we might live," the High Speaker said, "and we celebrate the new path that their sacrifice has opened for us all." The ceremony continued with the reading of names. Every human, every Alliance crew member who had died in the defense of Mera. It took nearly an hour to read them all. Jinha stood straight, throughout, honoring each name with his attention. When the formal ceremony ended, the hall broke into smaller groups. Jinha found himself approached by an Alliance Council member, a tall, blue-skinned Rigelian whose species had been among the first to return to Mara's defense. Ambassador Jinha, the Rigelian said, bowing slightly. I am Councillor Vex. I wish to speak with you personally. Jinha nodded politely. Of course, Councillor. What happened at Myera has changed the Alliance, Vex said, his voice low and serious. Many of us have been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Such as, Jinha prompted when the Rigelian paused, that we had become too calculating, too cold, too willing to sacrifice others for our own safety. Vex's large eyes showed genuine regret. We forgot what it meant to stand for something greater than survival. Jinha considered this. The Alliance had indeed changed in the past year. New defense protocols had been established, new cooperation agreements signed, the combined tactics developed during the Battle of Myera, Alliance precision with human unpredictability, had proven remarkably effective against the swarm in subsequent encounters. Humanity reminded us of something important, Vex continued, that sometimes the most logical choice is not the right one. Before Jinha could respond, Harin approached with an excited expression. Jinha, you need to come see this, she said. The Mayarans have prepared something special. She led him and Councillor Vex to a side chamber where a group of Mayarans stood in a circle. At their center was Talon, now a leader among his people. Ambassador, Talon greeted him warmly. We wish to show you the progress of our integration. Mayarans stepped back, revealing a strange, shimmering object in the center of their circle. It looked like a small silver tree, its branches constantly shifting and changing. What is it? Jinha asked. Us, Talon replied simply. A physical manifestation of our collective consciousness. After the transfer, we discovered new abilities we never knew we possessed. Jinha watched in fascination as the silver tree pulsed with light. Within its branches, he could see images, faces, places, memories. The transfer changed us, Talon explained. When 3 billion minds joined together in that moment of crisis, something new was born. We are still Marin, but we are also something more. It's beautiful, Harin whispered. Talon smiled. And it would not exist without humanity's stand. You gave us the chance to become something new. As they left the chamber, Jinha found himself walking alongside Quan. They moved to a large viewport that overlooked the new Marin capital city. Unlike the cities of Old Mara, this one was built with a blend of Maron and human design, silver spires alongside practical Earth-style buildings. The swarm has been pushed back beyond the outer rim, Quan said, breaking the comfortable silence. The new defense strategies have been more effective than anyone predicted. Jinha nodded, combining Alliance precision with human unpredictability. Who would have thought? Speaking of unpredictable, Quan said with a small smile, have you heard about the new joint fleet? I've seen the proposals, Jinha replied. A combined force of Alliance and human ships designed specifically to counter the swarm. It's more than that, Quan said. They're calling it the With You Always Fleet. And guess who they want to command it? Jinha raised an eyebrow. Not me, I hope. I'm a diplomat, not a fleet commander. No, Quan laughed. Jake, they offered him the position yesterday. He's thinking about it. Jinha smiled at that. Jake Morrison, the captain who had stood firm when the entire Alliance retreated, now being asked to lead their combined forces. It was fitting. As evening fell on New Mara, Jinha found himself alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The alien, sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, so different from Earth's yet beautiful in its own way. Harin joined him carrying 2 glasses of a shimmering liquid. Marin celebration wine, she explained, handing him one. They say it tastes like joy. Jinha took a sip. The liquid seemed to dance on his tongue, leaving a sensation of warmth and light. They're right, he said with surprise. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had followed the Alliance's orders? Harin asked quietly. If we had retreated with them? Jinha considered the question. Sometimes. But then I remember Rex's face when he volunteered for that final mission, and I know we made the right choice. We showed the galaxy something they had forgotten, Harin said. Jinha nodded. That survival isn't enough. That standing together isn't just strategic, it's right. That being human isn't about where you're born, but about what you're willing to fight for. As night fell completely, the city below lit up with silver lights that mirrored the stars above. Somewhere in that city, 3 billion Marin minds lived on in their new form. Somewhere in the space above, Alliance and human ships patrolled together, protecting what had been saved. And throughout the galaxy, a message had spread, a truth that had changed the course of history. When all hope seems lost, when the darkness closes in, humanity will stand and say, "With you always." Jinha raised his glass to the stars. "With you always," he whispered. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, he could almost hear Rex's voice answering back.